My house was built in 1904. It is a single-family home, wood frame setting on a concrete block foundation. I have been living here for about 12 years. Of all the weird things that my siblings and me have seen or heard in this house, this one event is my favorite. This happened to my brother. About 10 years ago, my brother and his best friends had started a garage band playing mostly Spanish rock, alternative music, but in Spanish. His friends could only get together on Sunday afternoons. They would practice into the early evening, and they would usually call it quits by 8 p.m. This was the time I usually showed up and went to bed, 'cause I worked the graveyard shift. This happened in late fall, so the days were getting shorter. They had just finished a long session when the decision to head to someone else's house came about. My brother handed his car keys to his buddies so they could load up the equipment. Everyone had filed out of the basement, but the tricky part was that they needed to walk all the way to the back of the basement, up the back stairs, through the kitchen doorway, down the hall into the living room and out into the front porch. Everyone was outside sitting in my brother's truck waiting for him. My brother was walking up the back stairs when he remembered that he had left his pancakes in a to-go container sitting on a speaker in the basement. He made the decision to go back. Now the basement is not clean, with full sight lines. There had been partitions made, and the boiler and main heating unit are right smack in the middle. So after my brother walks back, he is about to retrieve his food container, when out of the corner of his eye he sees it. It is a shadowy figure, right at his peripheral vision. This feeling of dread and uneasiness washed over my brother. We had been taught that if you are in the presence of a spirit or ghost and you felt a bad vibe, to say quick prayer or to cuss at it. My brother chose the latter. He basically just told it, "Hey, fuck you, I don't have time for this shit." My brother started to walk to the back of the basement and briskly up the stairs, closing doors and turning off lights as he was walking out. The last light switch is on the opposite side of the front door. Luckily, the door was open and the light from the street lamp was flooding the living room with its amber light. My brother said he felt something at his back, but at no point did he turn around. As he flicked the last switch, the living room went dark, as did rest of the house. As he stepped out, he pulled on the door, closing it behind him. Still holding his food container in one hand, he jogged down the few porch steps. He walked towards the front gate. Our house resides far from the main street, essentially having a large front yard but no rear garage. As he closed the gap between himself and his friend-laden truck, he kind of smiled and thought things over in his head, mad at himself for spooking out when there was no reason. He climbed into the driver's side of the truck, putting on his seatbelt and getting ready to pull out of the parking spot directly in front of the house, when one of his friends asked, "Hey, wait, what about your brother? Isn't he coming with us?" My brother answered, "What do you mean?" "He went to work early tonight. He is already gone. Do you see his car anywhere?" The next question they asked, "So then who was walking behind you when you were leaving the house?" The ball streaked towards little Jimmy Hansen, covering the distance uncomfortably fast. The scrawny boy, 2 sizes too small with the aviator glasses, cringed out of the way. It landed directly where he had been standing, and like that the game ended. "Damn it, Jimmy, you're supposed to catch the ball, not hide from it," a fat kid with a glove on one hand cried. A skinny boy with glasses turned from the pitcher's mound to look at Jimmy, disdain clearly visible on his face. "This is the 3rd run you've allowed, and you wonder why we never let you play with us. You're dog shit. Actually, I apologize to all loads of shit out there. You're even more useless. I'd prefer to have Roger Morris on our team, and he can't see a damn thing with those bug eyes." An easygoing boy with blonde shaggy hair and a confident smile strolled up to Jimmy, extending his hand to assist, and said, "Here, let me help you up. After all, you're the best player on our team. MVP hands down. Come on, boys, give him a cheer." The boys chanted Jimmy's name in a mocking parade of triumph. "I don't need your help, David," said Jimmy. Dirt smeared and face growing hot, the embarrassed boy attempted to climb to his feet. The hand extended to help struck lightning fast, catching the smaller boy squarely in the chest. With a groan of pain, The dirty boy hit the ground for the second time that afternoon. "Well, if I knew you liked to eat dirt so much, I never would have offered to help," said David, a wolfish smile forming on the landscape of his face. A chorus of cruel laughter echoed all around. "I hate you, David Baxley," said the wheezing boy. David looked at Jimmy with disgust, giving him a savage kick to his left kidney. "Why don't you do us all a favor and die? I doubt even your family would miss you." The rest of the boys walked away, leaving the bleeding Jimmy whimpering on the ground. No longer crying from pain but seething anger, slowly he began to crawl to his feet. "I wish I could go somewhere else. Just pick up and move and never have to see those shitheads ever again," said Jimmy, speaking to no one in particular. It was thoughts of revenge that occupied his mind, half-baked plans he didn't have the courage to act upon. No matter, it wasn't revenge he truly sought, but a friend. The idea of having people look at him and truly see him. Humiliation for David Baxley was just an added bonus. The bloody boy was still fantasizing about these things when he found himself staring at the intersection of Jackson and Main Street in the sleepy town of Brook Hollow, Tennessee. Brook Hollow is like many rural towns, so tiny that it doesn't even appear on the map. There are 876 residents in the tight-knit community, according to the 2008 census. Main Street boasts one general store, a gas station, the town hall, and Debbie's Diner. It was on the outside of the later building that he saw the missing sign of Jack Duncan, a 12-year-old boy from a neighboring town a few miles to the west. Jack was from Polk, a slightly larger town and known rival to Brook Hollow. Even though Jack was in the same grade as Jimmy, they had never met. Jimmy looked at the picture and saw that the boy had been missing for nearly 3 months. He wondered how his mom would react if he was missing that long. He reached the conclusion that she probably wouldn't even notice. Ever since she took that job at Debbie's to pay for the remainder of her husband's gambling debts, she was hardly even home. She was gone when he woke and didn't come back too well after he was asleep. The only time Jimmy had any communication with Laura Hanson was on Sundays. Even this small exposure was tainted by the bone-deep exhaustion. She may have been present, even so, she wasn't there. Laura wakes, eats, drinks, uses the bathroom, yet she isn't really living. She reminded the boy of those cheesy horror movies they sometimes play late at night. The Walking Dead. As little as his interaction with Laura, at least she still lived in the ramshackle motorhome right off the main highway. His dad, if he even still qualified to be called that, left some time back, draining the joint bank account and leaving the two of them penniless. Jimmy didn't even know where he stayed, let alone had a phone number for the bastard. A few years back he received a postcard from him. He was shelled up in some two-bit motel in the thriving city of Las Vegas. On the back of the card was a charming little note. It said, "Jimmy, I wish you could see the city. Maybe you could come out and visit. I'd love for you to come and hang with my friends. P.S. Could you have your mom send me some money? I'm in a little bit of trouble here." This led to his first real fight with his mom. He was adamant on going and meeting his father, thinking that if he got to know him he could change him. Bring him back. His mom wanted nothing to do with the man, nor did she want her son to be hurt again. The argument got heated and words were exchanged. In the end, he stayed, but some things chafe over time. Things were never quite the same. If the boy was honest with himself, he would have to admit there is no one in his life. He has no friends in school, there is no one waiting for him at home, and he is not a part of any extracurricular activities. He goes to school, comes home, does his homework, makes dinner for his mom, and goes to bed. It has never occurred to him that he is lonely. The fact is he has never known anything else. Jimmy doesn't actually live in Brook Hollow. His house is about 2 miles north up Highway 29. He lives outside of the school's jurisdiction, so he is unable to take the bus. He walks to school every day. The walk is peaceful and he actually looks forward to it. The boy possesses an overactive imagination and gets lost in his fantasies. A little less today, his ribs ache with every step. But not even this inconvenience can ruin the solitary 2-mile trek back home. He makes no turns. Highway 29 is Main Street. All he needs to do is walk straight and he will arrive at his house. But he is not walking in rural Tennessee anymore. He is a pioneer exploring the great frontier. Native Americans and wolves stalk him at night. He must be aware of the dangers that lie beyond every turn. He can see his way through any situation with the help of his trusty companion and best friend, One-Eyed Pete. Pete used to be an outlaw that robbed and cheated people, but changed his ways when Jimmy saved him from being hung on the hanging tree. A shudder runs through his body every time he remembers the hanging tree. It's the largest oak he had ever seen. He loves to climb trees but would never dream of climbing that one. It is twisted, not a single leaf on its branches. If evil was ever a location, it would be at the heart of that gnarled tree. Jimmy doesn't like to think about it. It always seems to ruin his mood, poison his mind. His fantasies always turn darker when he thinks of the oak. Suddenly he is aware of exactly how alone he is. A full mile out from the safety of the town. No one is nearby. It's just him, the trees, and his own tormented imagination. He wishes he wouldn't have thought of that tree. He wishes he had a dad to pick him up from school, but there is no rescue for him. In Jimmy's experience, heroes only exist in the storybooks. The hanging tree is in your mind, Jimmy, it isn't real, he tells himself over and over as if to ward away evil. And why not? For that tree is most definitely evil, the hideous villain in an insidious plot. In the primal portion of his mind, he senses danger. The same skittish feeling the antelope experiences shortly before the concealed lion pounces and feasts on flesh. Trees don't eat little boys, murmurs the frightened boy. Maybe so, yet that oak could hardly be classified in the same league as other trees, responds his own treasonous thoughts. The boy's mind splinters, warring factions jockeying for supremacy. Paranoia seizes him, inky black hands clawing the air out of his lungs. A young boy unaware of the inward mutiny happening amidst his own wits, completely left to his own demented imagination. Yet, the stakes of this adventure are a great deal higher than any he has yet to experience. His mother was fond of telling him, "What you think, you become." A truly awful thought slinks into his mind unbidden. What if the stories his mind conjures could gain reality too? The thought overwhelms the boy. His eyes shift back and forth searching for threats. Jimmy's senses are keen to his surroundings. Every twig snapping, a creature stalking. Every bush rustling, a hungry beast ready to devour. Yet, the petty fears of a child's tormented mind pales to the unearthly wrongness of the hanging tree. "What if Mom is right?" says the concerned boy to the emptiness. At this unwelcome thought the boy slams his eyes closed in a futile attempt to banish the horrific idea. "The hanging tree isn't real," says Jimmy, knowing in his heart this isn't true. In the back of his mind, the boy is certain that the moment he opens his eyes, he will see it. He will see the strands of rope dangling from the gnarled branches. He will smell the smell of decaying bodies. He will hear the creak of rope swaying gently in the cool breeze. The boy doubles his efforts in a vain attempt to keep his eyes closed. He sees red due to the strain he is putting on his muscles. He hears the steady pulse of his blood rushing in his head. The boy also understands that all this effort is for naught. He must open his eyes at some point. Jealousy creeps into the boy's heart. Envy for the man born without sight. For the boy understands the moment he sees, there will be no coming back. The moment has come. Jimmy can no longer keep his eyes shut. Seconds before his eyes fling open, he feels the gentle touch of someone's hand on his shoulder. This touch startles him, and the boy throws wide his eyes. Sure enough, a few hundred yards in front of him stands the abomination. A lone tree on the top of a bald, scarred hill. Not a living thing to be seen. No vegetation growing on the hill, No squirrels scuttling about, just a great oak, standing, an obscene gesture to the god of this world. The only fruit of this tree the decaying flesh of dead men, and likewise, the only cup the curdled blood of those hanging. A final meal set for the boy, an unholy communion. The hand, whose was it? Was it even human? The little boy left visibly shaking at the touch of the unknown. Is this death? The icy grip of the reaper himself here to harvest with his scythe. No marriage, no children, not knowing the pleasures of true friendship. Life cut short, a lamentable state of affairs. It was in this line of thought where true courage was mustered. A strength measured not by the size of his muscles or the amount one could lift, but the more impressive type, the type quantified in the amount of shit one can wade. Identified in the amount of crap hands dealt without bowing out altogether. Young Jimmy Hansen did the unthinkable. He turned and faced death, looking it in the eyes. Eyes, yes, but death perhaps not. It was no titan of horror, nor was it the poster child of demented evil. Child it was, but this boy was familiar. Not anyone from his class, yet he knew the boy. In a moment of clarity, he recognized him. It was the missing kid, Jack Duncan. He looked identical to the poster on the side of Debbie's diner. He wore the same black and white Vans t-shirt, ripped blue jeans, and some tattered Nike tennis shoes. The thoroughly terrified Jimmy stood staring at the missing boy, mouth ajar. Jack, with an easygoing grin plastered on his face, said, "It's about time. Someone comes looking for me. I've been waiting for you, Jimmy, far too long." With an audible click the boy shut his gaping mouth and responded, Jack, you've been missing for nearly 3 months. Have you been out here all along? Are you alone? Are you hurt?" Jimmy fired these questions in rapid succession, growing more suspicious with each word. "I've been right here, waiting for you to come and play with me. You see, I am like you. I never had anyone to play with either. Now you are here, and you must stay with me," said the bigger boy with a smile on his face. Jimmy's mind quieted. For the first time in his life he saw himself clearly. A boy with no friends, no father, hardly a mother, bullied every day, and no way of escape. Clarity revealed the harsh truth. A day had not gone by that he wasn't lonely. There was no one in his life. There was no life for him. The undersized boy looked at the other with longing in his eyes. He thirsted for a friend, like a man lost at sea. He hungered for companionship, like a man stuck in the wilderness. It wasn't just a desire, he was desperate for a friend. If the bigger boy would leave, Jimmy felt as if his soul would tear in half. His heart would shatter into 1,000 pieces, unable to be put back together. The boy's eyes were a mirror reflecting the same sad truth. They understood each other. Both had lived, and neither had anyone to share it with. The boys, bound by shared hardships, grasped onto each other, refusing to let go. The combined burden of loneliness lessened by 2 backs instead of 1. With few words exchanged, the 2 of them created soul ties. Not the ties of lovers, but of lifelong friends. The type one dies for. The rare type of friendship that most people never form in their entire life. It was rich. It was wholesome. Jimmy felt as if his life was complete. The one thing he always desired truly fulfilled. Jack grabbed the smaller boy's hand and guided him towards the tree. Jimmy, not wanting to get anywhere near that monstrosity, tried to pull back. "Don't worry. The tree is a good place. It will take us to a new land filled with boys and girls just like you and I. No Davids or bullies like him," said a smiling Jack. "How did you know about David?" "You've been missing all this time," said a concerned-looking Jimmy. "Jimmy, I hear whispers. My friends tell me things. They will tell you secrets too. If you want to be friends with me, that is—" The bigger boy looked down at his ragged shoes. He looked so pitiful, and Jimmy was so starved for companionship. How could he not follow the boy? Jack led the two of them to the scarred trunk of the tree. Here he let go of Jimmy's hand, telling the boy, "Do exactly what I do." Jimmy's fear bottled up deep in his guts. He felt as if he was going to explode. The tree was sinister and twisted, evil through and through. Yet, the little boy had never had a friend. He was not willing to throw that away so easily. Jack walked to the lowest hanging branch. He reached up and grabbed one of the dangling nooses. He wrapped it around his neck and looked at Jimmy. "Don't worry, no pain is felt. The hanging tree is magic. You'll close your eyes on this world and wake up in a better place with me and all of my friends," said a smiling Jack. Jack, I don't think I can do this. It seems dangerous. I need to go back home soon. My mom will be waiting for me," said a terrified Jimmy. A heartbroken Jack looked at the smaller boy and said, "Jimmy, I can't believe you would lie to me. Your mom isn't home and she wouldn't even notice that you are missing. Come with me. I am the only one who cares for you." Tears streaming down the smaller boy's face, he responded, "Please don't make me do it. This place frightens me. Can't you just come home with me?" "No. This world despises people like you and me. We weren't made for it. We were made for the hanging tree. This is where you belong," snarled the bigger boy. Jimmy, eyes still running, reached with trembling hands for the dangling noose. He seized it. With one final glance at his friend, the little boy placed the loop around his neck. Immediately the noose drew tight. It felt as if the tree was hauling him up by it. The boy kicked and squirmed, trying to shout for help, but his airflow was cut off. He managed to make a choking noise, then with one final twitch all was still. Still as the glassy surface of a lake on a spring day. Little Jimmy Hansen had finally made a friend. The two boys remained dangling together, gently swaying in the stale autumn breeze. I have to say, one of the things I hate the most is to have somebody walking behind me. Doesn't matter if it's a friend or a complete stranger, I don't like it. I feel insecure, watched, and uncomfortable. You might call me paranoid, but honestly, for me, it's unbearable. Let me begin by saying that the reason I practically hate that is because of some occurrences during my childhood. All of the events that I will tell you actually happened, so you probably will understand that for protection purposes, yourself, my family, and mine, I will avoid providing any names or locations. Also, you should know English is not my primary language. I was born in a small town surrounded by hills, factories, and railroads. Its weather was mostly dominated by rain, hail, and snow, and its streets were poorly adapted to handle such drastic climatic changes. Being a small town, the places that you could visit during your spare time were limited, so it wasn't unusual that you saw half the town in the movies during the weekend or even buying groceries for the week. There weren't many schools to attend, careers to study, or places to work. You just knew that if you lived there you would probably do the same things everybody else did, you'd had the same friends you grew up with, and probably marry one of them. People there were comfortable with this monotony. Extremely boring if you ask me. I hated there. I guess the only cool thing is that whenever we had snow, school got cancelled and me and my brothers went outside to make snow angels and snow fights. Well, it was in this old, forgotten, and non-pretty little town that my parents bought their first house. It was relatively large. Considering the continuous movement of trains, tractors, and traffic, chaos that was common every day, they were lucky enough to get a house away from all that in a relaxed and familiar colony. It was originally a one-story house, which turned out to be perfect as there were only my parents and my two brothers. However, after I was born, space became an issue, so they decided to expand it and build a second floor. This is basically how the house was distributed. In the first floor was the dining room, the kitchen, one bedroom I shared with my older sister, a full bathroom, and a small hallway that led towards my older brother's room. On the second floor was a TV room, and at the end my parents' bedroom with their respective bathroom. There was a small balcony with metal railing at the foot of the stairs to go to the second floor. It was pretty cool as you had a panoramic view of the TV room and you didn't need to go all the way downstairs to call someone, you could just do it from the balcony. It was poorly designed, I must say, as the ceiling was at such a high level that not even a 6'5" tall person could reach it. This abnormal height between the floor and ceiling caused everything to look darker than normal at night. Now that I think about it, it was a very strange house. I have good and bad memories during the 11 years I lived there. You could say we were a close but dysfunctional family. I got along well with my two older brothers, although it wasn't unusual that we had differences from time to time as we were each 5 years apart. My parents, however, used to fight horribly almost daily, and unfortunately, my brothers and I were the main witnesses. These fights normally ended with my dad breaking something and leaving the house furious, and my mom crying and cursing out loud in our presence. My mom used to get very irritable and suffered from severe episodes of depression. She vented her frustration on us and exploited at the smallest detail by hitting us or saying things a child should not hear. After these episodes, she got full of remorse and promised us that it wouldn't happen again. It didn't matter how much we loved our parents and the fact that we understood that not everything could be perfect, we knew it would happen again. It was a vicious circle full of tension. You might be wondering, why do I tell you all of this? Well, I think it's important. I've heard some people say that a negative environment attracts negative things, but to be honest, I'm not sure if it applies in this case. Yes, my parents had trouble, but I always felt that these issues were intensified by whatever thing it was in that house. Trust me, it's not easy for me to recall all of these bad memories, but I really need to get it off my chest. There is something that up until today I can't get out of my head, and that is the terror I experienced whenever I was on the second floor and mostly near those stairs. Have you ever entered friends' or strangers' house and gotten a heavy, suffocating vibe? Well, that's the kind of feeling I got whenever I went downstairs. I can't tell you when it started. I had that feeling since I can remember. It was just there. I had a golden rule, to never get near that area when it got dark. Luckily for me, not. I woke up almost every night due to biological necessities. I couldn't stand going to the bathroom on my own because outside my bedroom you could see the edge of the stairs, and that freaked me out. So I had no choice but to wake my older sister up, who unwillingly joined me. I wasn't inconsiderate, let me be clear. She used to do the same to me. Being together gave us a false sense of protection. I can't fully explain how I felt whenever I was near those stairs, the TV room or my parents' bedroom, but it wasn't pleasant. I felt watched, stalked, and unwelcome. I felt somebody was following me. I felt there was something there, something that wanted to harm me badly. I fell off those stairs more times than I can remember, even though I tried to be extremely careful. I can't find a rational explanation for those occurrences. I remember this one time, my sister and I prepared a puppet show in the balcony. It was my mom's birthday and we wanted to surprise her, so we basically covered up the balcony and its metal railing with a thick blanket. We got 2 small plastic chairs and sat down while we extended our arms so you could only see the puppets from the other side. I was in the middle of the balcony, when suddenly I felt like my chair was being pushed to the edge. I freaked out, but before I could react, the chair reached the edge and slipped, making me fall off the stairs and hurting my coccyx badly. My mother blamed my sister, but I knew she wasn't guilty. When I tried to explain what had happened, my mom told me to stop trying to defend her by making stuff up and telling me I had an overactive imagination. I wasn't lying. Something had pushed me, and it wasn't my sister. I had nightmares almost every night. The funny thing is that my nightmares consisted of almost the same things, with slight variations. It always started with me waking up at night with an extreme thirst. When I headed to the kitchen for water, I stopped to watch a curious porcelain doll with dark hair and a white dress in the balcony. When I got close to her, I noticed one of her arms move and an evil glint in her eyes. At that moment I realized that something was not right. Something was inside that doll, and whatever it was, it wanted me. Terror filled me over. I knew it was coming for me, and if I wanted to live, I had to run and reach my bedroom. Only then I would be safe. That's what I did. I ran desperately, but I couldn't run fast as my legs did not respond like they were supposed to. Some nights I reached my bedroom and I was safe, it couldn't touch me, but most times it reached me, dragging me downstairs and tearing me into pieces. Every night I woke up drenched in sweat and full of tears. It was horrible. I wasn't the only one that felt something was wrong. My brother had a lot of problems sleeping, and he told us that night after night he could hear someone playing the piano on the second floor. We didn't have a piano, and our house was far away from the rest, so we could not hear our neighbors, and let's be honest, that didn't make any sense. My sister could not stand being downstairs when it was dark either, and even less in my parents' bedroom. She claimed that she heard strange noises or had the light suddenly turn off by itself, and my mom, who was a religious in almost an extreme level, decided that the best thing to do was to find a priest so he could bless the house, and so he did. But that didn't stop it. Strangely, I remember we mentioned all of these things between us in a vague manner, but we never questioned why these happened. We didn't like to talk much about it, in my case, though the less we spoke of the matter in its entirety, the better. I didn't like thinking about it and pretended everything was okay. But it was not. As time passed, my parents fought more constantly, and my nightmares grew worse. I remember vividly one dream in which my father was lost. We were desperately looking for him all over the house, and I thought I had lost the battle when I found a hidden, long corridor in the closet of my parents' bedroom. Once followed, I would run into a dusty trunk. Opening it, I found a smaller box, and inside was my father, cut into pieces. Within me I knew someone or something in that house had killed him, and it would come for us next. I remember I woke up crying and shaking and went directly to check on my dad, but he wasn't home. I went outside, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. His car was completely smashed. It turns out he had an accident when trying to leave the house, and he was in the hospital. Fortunately, there were no complications, and he was back with us the next day. Anyway, I think I'm losing track here. My point is, there was definitely something in that house, something I can't quite explain, something evil, and it was clear that it didn't want us there. There were so many things that happened in that house, many of them scared the hell out of me, but among all of them, there was one particular event that marked me completely. I was around 10 years old. I woke up as usual late at night, this time due to an extreme thirst. I wanted a glass of water, but I didn't want to go alone to the kitchen, so, as always, I turned to my sister to go along with me. This time, though, it was different. No matter how many times I tried, she did not wake up, she just ignored me. I was scared, but I couldn't stand the thirst. Besides, my throat was raspy. I decided to go to the kitchen alone and made up my mind not to look to the balcony/stairs section when I got back to my room. Believe me, I don't think I've ever wanted to drink water that much. I took the biggest cup I could find, filled it all the way to the top, and drank it all almost in a single gulp. I then headed back to my room, but once I reached the hallway, I stood still as an eerie feeling overtook me. I could clearly feel someone watching me from behind. I remained still for a few seconds before turning around slowly to meet the balcony. Everything was dark, so I couldn't see very well, but I had the impression that someone was standing at the foot of the stairs. I was paralyzed, and I had to be hallucinating, but how could I? I was definitely wide awake, so I had to make sure. With all my willpower, I moved a little closer to the stairs. I turned pale. It was not my imagination. Somebody was standing there. I froze, I could not move. I started having problems breathing. It was a woman. Her skin was pale, grayish. She had long dark hair and had a long white dress. She looked like the doll of my nightmares. She was staring right at me. Her eyes were white in their entirety. She was sort of grinning. I could not believe, nor did I want to believe, what I was seeing. That moment for me seemed eternal. Before I could find out what to do, she contorted in a fast and horrible way. Her right arm went disjointed, and I heard her bones creak. As soon as this happened, I ran as fast as I could back to my bedroom, slammed the door, and took my hand to my chest as I felt like my heart was about to explode. I started crying hysterically, made sure the door was closed and got into my bed. I kept on looking at the door, fearing it would burst open, and thinking she was coming for me. But nothing happened, at least for a few minutes. I kept on staring towards the door when suddenly, to my horror, I heard the knob move and saw the door opening slowly. I couldn't stop crying, terrified, but I didn't dare to scream, move, or say a word. However, no woman entered, nobody accessed my room. I just waited, scared shitless, but nothing happened. I couldn't sleep all night. I wanted to, but couldn't tell my mom. I knew what she would say, that I was making it up, that I had an overactive imagination. I couldn't tell my sister, I didn't want to scare her, she was afraid enough already. I wanted to, but I didn't tell anyone and kept it all to myself. I did not understand. I tried to deny that it ever happened, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. It became part of me and it tormented me every night in my dreams. She came for me, she tortured me and laughed at my suffering. A couple of months later, one of my cousins came for vacation. He spent the night on the couch down in the TV room. The next day when we all woke up, we found him in the kitchen wandering. He was shaking, his face was pale, he had dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious he did not sleep. When we asked him what had happened and heard his reply, I felt like I was going to pass out. "There was a woman standing on the stairs," was all he managed to say. After a while, when he was calmed, he described to us in full detail the same woman I saw months before. I knew then I wasn't losing my mind. She was real. But I never understood. We moved from that house and left the city a year later, not because of this but due to my dad's job. Unfortunately, my brother did not. He spent 6 more years living there on his own while he finished his university and settled down with his girlfriend. He lived there until he couldn't stand it anymore. He moved in with us after that and told me he was afraid of it. He did not want to go back to it. He told me he saw horrible things, and whenever I asked him what those were, he went mute. I never knew what he meant. I never knew what he went through, but he was clearly traumatized by it. He was never the same. I regret it still, not being there for him, to have left him alone when we moved out. The house is currently abandoned and I haven't been there in more than 10 years, and believe me, I don't intend on going back. This might sound weird, but the other day I was talking to one of my best friends about this matter, and he told me that there might be someone buried in that house. When he told me that, I felt the chills. That would explain a lot. We were a broken family, but even still, we loved and took care of each other. I like to think that the being that habited that house did not hurt us physically because of this. But it almost reached that level. Up until today, sometimes I still ask myself, who was that woman and what did she want? Why was she tormenting us? I don't think I'll ever have the answer, and I don't really want to know.